Hello. So this session is VR in EDU, and my name is Leah Lacrosse. I'm an 8th grade science teacher in Huron. I've been teaching for almost 25 years, and I was really disappointed that I could not be live for the GTech Summit. Unfortunately, my number was drawn for jury duty, so I am creating a video of our my students and my journey in using VR tools in the classroom. Um, this session was supposed to run from 1:50 to 2:50 on Tuesday. If you have any questions about any of the resources or any follow-up questions about the content that I'm sharing, please feel free to reach out. I am easy to access on Twitter at @LLacrosse, and my email is leahlacrosse@gmail.com. I do have a slide at the end of the presentation with that information. So no worries if you didn't write that down. We'll go ahead and that'll be at the end if you have anything that you want to follow up with. So without delay, let's talk a little bit about VR and EDU. Many people have come to understand the difference between AR and VR. But just a quick refresher, AR stands for augmented reality. And if you want to think of experiences like Pokemon Go or another app experience in which you have content that gets overlaid upon the real world environment, that's what augmented reality is. It's taking the real world environment and changing it a little bit. There's usually, as the definition here, the Wikipedia definition states, the world is enhanced by some sort of computer generated information. So while I mentioned Pokemon Go, in the classroom, augmented reality has been something that I've actually used with my students in science class since probably about 2012, 2013, with the use of iPads in the classroom. Currently, I teach 8th grade science, but at that time I was teaching 5th grade science, and we used augmented reality apps such as Spacecraft 3D, which is the app that you'll see the icon for on the left. And with Spacecraft 3D, I was able to have my students hold their iPads and focus on a spot either on their desk or the floor, and they were able to select different vehicles, NASA vehicles, and the vehicle would just like appear on their desk, and they could manipulate it by rotating it around on their screen. They could tap on it and get additional information. And so this is one of my first experiences with augmented reality in students. And I will have to say that the engagement level that I saw my students experiencing was amazing. They were so curious about the spacecrafts. They were so excited to go to the next spacecraft. And so NASA just definitely created a winner there with that app. Just recently, there has been an app created by the Smithsonian Institute called Mission to Mars AR. And this is another app that has like the layer of digital resources over top of like the reality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share the iPad screen so that I can just show you what this like augmented reality would look like. So let's see if I can pull this off. iPhone, iPad. Okay, so here you see my iPad. And the app that I'm going to open up is the Mission to Mars AR. And most of these, hopefully, let's see if, I'm not sure if you can hear it right now. Let me do a stop share and make sure that like the audio is playing. Yep, share sound. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. So a lot of these augmented reality apps will have some sort of sound in the background. This one's cool because as you move through it, you can go ahead and you'll hear different things happening in the background. But this app allows you to meet the rovers, and what'll happen is it'll allow you to oh goodness, open up your screen and have your camera ready to go. And in a certain part, you can go to, sorry, you can go to driving the rovers. I'm sorry, AR experience. So for this, what you'll notice is it asks for access to the camera. So anytime you're using these apps, they'll need to use the camera on the device. So whether it's a phone or an iPad or some other tablet. And it'll walk you through going and setting it up. And then you can go ahead and decide what kind of placement you want. And you can see this is like just in my workout room with the dog on the bed and everything. So it's exactly what you would think it looks like here. But if you want to go ahead and you can take a look, students can actually get up and walk around this. They can actually drive these. And so for the students, they're getting a chance to see something that would normally be a video or maybe even just a picture in the book. They're actually seeing on their screen. They can get up, they can walk around it, and they can experience it in a totally different way. So just like that experience that my fifth graders had with spacecraft 3D back in like 2012, the apps that are coming out right now are ones in which they can engage in because they're overlaying the content upon the real world around them. So it might just be their desktop that they're putting the spacecraft on. It might be something else in the room, like maybe you have an arena set up, like a hula hoop that you want the kids to work within. But augmented reality is taking that content and providing it in an engaging way, but just slightly different. 1 second. Okay, and so while augmented reality experiences, I still utilize these experiences with my students because I still use iPads in the classroom, and there are some other phenomenal AR apps out there. What I'd like to talk about today, though, I already did the demo. What I'd like to talk about today is VR, which is just slightly different from virtual reality in that instead of having the real world and then this augmented layer on it, this experience allows you to have a completely different environment than the real world. And the picture there actually shows one of the first times I even used virtual reality, which was in drone flight. VR goggles were connected to the camera on top of the micro drone that I'm holding. And what we were doing is piloting the drones from what's called first person view. And so that first person view, it's actually, you feel like you're sitting on the drone because your stream is the camera that's on the drone. And so you can see yourself flying through the hoops that your micro drone is. You can see yourself moving around the room. And so that was actually my first experience in VR. And I would say that that absolutely hooked me because I really, really liked that feeling of being able to see and kind of block everything out around me. I will say that VR experiences can at sometimes be somewhat like dizzying for some people. It can be a lot of like, you get a little bit motion sick because of like, especially with something like a drone that's flying very fast, your eyes and adjustment to it, it can be a little bit disorienting. So something to think about ahead of time is not everybody experiences VR with such a positive experience. And so being sensitive to that. But VR has infiltrated our world in so many different ways. It used to be just that you would see like Google Cardboard and people would be sliding their phones inside of these Google Cardboard headsets. Now we have headsets like the Oculus, which I'm going to talk about here quite a bit. Headsets that completely bring the outside world and shuts that out so that you're only in the world of the headset, and you hear and you see the experiences in that world primarily. But in medical military training in room 201 at McCormick Junior High, we use VR headsets. So my why was because I was hooked into VR and I thought, this is really cool. This is something that I bet, just like the iPad, they're going to have educational applications out there that really provide an awesome experience. I also started hearing more and more talk from my students about their own personal use of VR headsets. And anytime I talked to them about it, it was that they were super engaged in them, but it was games. They were pretty much just gaming. There wasn't much else to it. And so I thought, why would I use these for just games in the classroom? So my use of VR was kind of tabled and kind of restricted to just with micro drones until I started looking at Oculus headsets that were being promoted on television, um, and and I did a little bit of research, which I'll get into here in a minute. But the route for using virtual reality in the classroom has an unlimited amount of possibilities. There are so many different routes you can take. There are lots of different choices out there. You've already heard me mention something like, the Google Cardboard headsets, the Oculus headsets. And then there's just a variety of software that's available that doesn't have to be on the student's face, but it still provides that virtual reality in which they are interacting and or building a world that's separate from the real world. So it's your journey with students, it's your choice. I will say that I use a mix. I use Oculus headsets in the classroom and I use software on our iPads. So let me just run through some of the different software pieces that I use in the classroom that I really, really recommend. If you're not interested in using VR headsets, but you'd like to try to see what VR could be in your classroom, these are some of the best that I have found. So first of all, Minecraft. It's not new. Minecraft I was using back in 2012 on our iPads with my fifth graders. We were creating worlds for different ecosystems around it to show different biomes. We were using Minecraft to create different NASA facilities. Like, we loved Minecraft in fifth grade. I found that love still holds in eighth grade with my eighth grade scientists. I had a couple of students just a couple of years ago for their final project of the year. They created an entire virtual world for me in Minecraft that had legit all the content from the year, everything that we had talked about, from Mendel and genetics to physics and looking at Newton's laws to layers, rock layers, and looking at erosion patterns in their one Minecraft world, which they pretty much called it Lacrosse's world. You went from one area to the next and you had a completely cool experience seeing all the science from the year. So don't discount Minecraft. If it is something that your school is willing to work with you on and provide servers for, and if your students are interested, it is a wonderful place to create and learn together. Another really, really cool piece of software that I've used with students has been CoSpaces. And CoSpaces is one in which students, again, they're creating virtual worlds. And you can imagine it could be anything from like the science topics that I mentioned in reference to the Minecraft world to recreations of setting in books and in stories that students are reading, historical places, looking at, it's again, limitless. CoSpaces is a wonderful place to blend all of the learning together, and it allows students to build. And we know that when students build, when they make, just like when we build and we make, they are so much more engaged in the content. So Minecraft and CoSpaces to me are kind of like the creation end of VR. Like they're the perfect places for students to work if they're interested in creating in VR. Not that you can't create in Minecraft and CoSpaces on your own, but I found that students will, more times than not, they will invest more energy, more time, more everything into staying in that digital world than I could. So those are two VR recommendations that I have for creation in VR. The next two that I have there um, are more for like, for me in my world, I've used Nearpod VR to share experiences with students. So Nearpod has been an app software that's been around, um, I'm going to say for from at least like 2016 on, maybe even earlier. But it's basically a presentation software that's really kind of similar to like PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, but it puts in it an interactive piece that students can interact back and forth, and you can do activities within it. But Nearpod allows you to control the pacing of the lesson. So you're with your students, they're working within the same set of slides that you are, but you are providing the pacing, the instruction, and some VR experiences. So you can use the Nearpod VR experiences that they have ready to go, and you can plug them right into your slides, or you can just take what they have and use those VR experiences. I will say that this involves some cost. If it is something that your district can invest in, then that's awesome. If it's something that you as an individual are having to pay for, then you may want to look at asking your parent teacher organization or some sort of group to help with the cost of this. But it is a paid feature for many of the Nearpod experiences, the VR experiences. Google Street View, on the other hand, is not a paid app. It is it's the app that we would use to navigate around. But what you'll find is within Google Street View, you can take your students literally on a tour around the world. And you can create actual tours within Google Street View where they go from place to place in the order that you want them to go in. Google Street View is one of the apps that is being recommended since Google Expeditions is going away. Google Expeditions was a wonderful VR experience that was offered at one point. But it had pre-made tours and everything ready to go. It's not being supported anymore, but Google's answer is to check out Street View. And this is one thing that I will say I have used with my students, especially when I want them to see something that is not in our area. You know, if I want them to see different mountain ranges. I mean, I live in Northern Ohio, so that's not going to happen unless I virtually take them there. So Google Street View allows you to drop and into those areas that may not be ones that you would automatically think of. So consider Google Street View and consider Google Arts and Culture. This is for those people who are obviously in arts. This is a wonderful VR tool for you that can allow your students to go in to different museums, to different areas, indoor, outdoor museums. There's a ton of really, really cool places and spaces for them to learn in that virtual reality. So that being said, I do mix in these tools throughout the school year. I do use the iPads and Chromebooks for some of these experiences, but my venture this year has been mainly in working with the Oculus Quest 2 headsets. And for those of you who aren't really totally aware what these headsets are, they are headsets that are basically all computer within the headset. So The Oculus Quest 2s do not need to be plugged into anything. The software is actually loaded to them from like a device like an iPhone or an iPad or whatever. And you basically load up the apps that you want to be on this device. So in my mind, you've got, it's basically like they've got the computer screen within their goggles. They have the handsets, which is allowing them to interact and move things and do things like drawing and grabbing and manipulating the world that they're in. You can see from the picture in the middle that the headset does completely cover the eyes around the top of the face. The student is wearing a face mask because this picture was taken when we were in hybrid mode. And so all of our students were wearing their masks. They wore their masks even when they were wearing the headsets, unless it caused some type of anxiety or it was physically like becoming a problem for them. Most students just kept their face masks on. Now, there are some concerns with using the Oculus Quest headsets. And the first one that people mention is the cost of them. The headsets themselves are $299, I believe, $299. With that, you don't have any like software automatically included. You add the software. Just like an iPad or an iPhone, some of the apps are free and some of the applications are not free. They range in cost from, just like iPad apps, anywhere from $1.99 to $30 or more. So it really depends on like what your comfort level, what your ability is with finances, what kind of cost you want to pay. In my classroom, I have 6 Oculus Quest headsets. They were acquired through 3 different grants. So I did not get them all at once. I ended up purchasing them through a variety of grants. So my cost was spread out among a couple different methods. The other really big question that people have is, because Oculus works through Facebook, there are some concerns with privacy. The referencing to Facebook having access to the content that you're loading on there, and just like any recording that could be done while you're using the software. There are for the apps, you are able to turn off certain preferences. And as far as having like Facebook accounts actually connected to these headsets, because I only had 6 headsets, I used one Facebook account. It was a just basically like a dummy account that I created that allowed me to have like a school Gmail account attached to it. But really it is just a shell that doesn't get used. I don't interact through it or anything. It's just so that our Oculus sets can be updated with software. So for me, in my world, that's what works. I will say that Oculus has answered some of the questions about like, how do we manage these with Facebook accounts? And they do have a school plan that you can get support with, and they will go ahead and help with the loading and designing of the actual accounts that go with the headsets. I cannot give much more detail to that because that's not the world I'm in. I'm only 6 devices. And so unfortunately, I can't go much more on that. I can talk to you a little bit about the time on the devices. My students spend 40 minutes with me. I do not want them behind a headset for all 40 minutes, obviously. I use the headsets for short activities that range anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes at the most. So my students are relatively low on the time as far as how much time they are behind the goggles. They tell me about how much time they spend at home, and I'm actually it makes me nervous because I'm like, you guys need to just take the goggles off and go outside. But balance in the classroom, right? That's what we're trying to achieve, is we're trying to give students activities and experiences that are engaging, but not the same engagement maybe that they always have at home. And so I love using virtual and augmented reality, but I use it as a small part of my instruction. I weave it into things like stations. It's VR headset stations. I weave it into activities that are like extension activities, or the content, like if I'm presenting content, they get it. It's a 10 to 15 minute, like little mini lesson, and then the headsets come off. So that being said, our hallway does sometimes seem like it's full of students with headsets, but it's simply because we're rotating through 85 to 90 students. As far as the safety, there's a couple of different things with safety. One, especially during COVID, we're putting things on our faces. And so how do you deal with that? Well, I mentioned that some of the students they did keep their masks on. And then also the headsets had like a rubber cover that went over top of the part that actually touches their face. And so that part of the headset, the handsets, and the part that would be up underneath, students cleaned every time they use them. They cleaned them, I cleaned them. We made sure that between use, our headsets were cleaned. And so as far as like that safety issue, we dealt with it by having lots of cleaning materials, and we gave it the time that it needed. We knew that we were only going to be able to rotate through this many people because we have to do this much cleaning. So safety as far as cleanliness, that's how we attacked that problem. As far as like the space, with the Oculus headsets, you actually draw a circle around yourself, which is called your guardian. And if you move with outside of that guardian, the world that you're in, the activity that you're doing, the world you're in sort of fades away. And so you actually know when you've gone past your guardian. You can sense it because of how the screen looks around you. And so students, one thing we did is we trained right away on like, how do you create your guardian? We spread out in the hallway. We made sure that like each person had a good section that they could work with and they weren't going to bump into anybody. If you can find a place like a gymnasium, that's perfect. Having some boundaries ready to go that the students are aware of, that's something that I really recommend. I will also say there's a layer of safety in telling everybody what you expect, the expectations while you're using the headsets. I will not tolerate anybody interrupting anyone else's VR experience. If you've ever used VR goggles and you've gotten kind of into the activity and you're really like focused, someone walking past you too close, someone making physical contact with you, someone talking really loud in your vicinity can be very jarring. It can be very disruptive and it can scare you. So I'm usually in this mode. I'm at my doorway and I'm watching the students in the hallway. I'm watching the students work in my classroom. And so I'm monitoring that. But I make it very clear before we use the headsets what the expectations are. And I have taken away students' time with headsets because they disrupted someone else. I've even had to ask other colleagues to hey, when you're walking past the students, just please make sure that you step back a little bit because it's really kind of nerve-wracking when you're in this VR world. And it's absolute no tolerance for touching another person or trying to scare them while the headsets are on. So those are all the things I feel like I should say ahead of time before I talk about using the headsets, because this is not something that I did lightly. I gave it a lot of thought, and I talked to my students a lot about what they were feeling and thinking, and as they were using them, what experiences they were having. So a lot of time on that. So now, given all of that other stuff, why would I even use these tools? I have iPads. Why not just use VR on the iPads? Well, the content delivery when you're using VR is really, really engaging. So my journey with VR and students really began in space. The first apps that I wanted to use with my students were apps that dealt with space environments. And so I actually wrote a grant to the Ohio Space Grant Consortium and requested a couple of headsets to be funded. And they delivered. They ended up giving me 2 headsets to start with. And from there, the very first apps that we loaded were Apollo 11 Quest and Mission ISS. Both of these apps on the VR headsets, you basically load to the you load them to the headsets from your iPhone or your iPad, whatever you are managing your headsets through. And it's one of those apps that you don't have to give a whole lot. These are apps that you don't have to give a whole lot of attention to beforehand, because they walk the students through the content. So the students in the Apollo 11 quest were learning about Apollo missions, the moon, learning about the physics behind moon landing, seeing some really amazing content from that time period. And then with Mission ISS, they are actually doing some problem solving on the International Space Station and doing some activities that are problem solving. And I really liked both of these because they gave me an entryway into VR without having to prompt the students too much ahead of time. It was really easy for them to follow directions. I wanted to make sure that, like, as we began this journey, that like the students knew that they could give me suggestions. I was like, hey guys, it's the first time I'm using these, so let me know if there's something you can think of. And again, I mentioned the open space, having the hallway and having them spread out. That was student directed and teacher directed. Like, I knew I had to have that cleaning station. You can see it in the picture. It has the wipes, it has the garbage can underneath, it has everything set up so that students can, when they're done, go directly there, clean everything off, set it aside to dry, and so on. But I found out that like those space apps were fantastic, but there was so much more out there. One of the first apps that I found that I really, really wanted to get involved with is the Wander app. And this is like Google Tour View, Street View, but it's even better because the students are actually, with the headsets on, they're looking around them, and the world that it's actually like they were dropped right in Antarctica, right in the I don't know, the Andes Mountains. Like, they're just right in that space. However, Wander is a paid app. I believe at that time it was $7.99. And so I emailed the app developer and I said, I just got these Oculus headsets. I have no other funding. Could you give me a free code to the Wander app? I would love to try it with my students. And they said, absolutely, we'll give you 5 of them. So share them with your friends. And I do have some of those app codes. If anybody is interested, please email me. I'd be happy to share with you. But by contacting the app developer, I started to figure out, like, hey, I don't have to do this all on my own. There are people out there that really want to see VR take off. And so Wander was a beautiful place to start, because I'm going to share a video here, and the girls are sitting in desks and they're in the Wander app. And what I have done is, in Wander, you can basically make a tour that you take people through, and they can click to the different locations. I created a tour that covered some of the geology that we had been studying, like erosion and landforms created through erosion and deposition, anything from caves to what you're going to see the girls looking at here, to mountains, to, I mean, I had them going all over the world in this tour. And so I think you can hear it. Here's a quick little video showing the girls interacting.
Okay, so what feature do you see right in front of you, Cami?
I see a cave. Oh yeah, I see a little cave. Yep.
Okay, turn and look at some of the other parts. Do you see the C stack?
Yeah, that's a C stack.
Good, 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 good. Okay, Cece, do you see anything in the background?
And if you'll notice, in between when she notices the sea cave and the sea stack, which I had to prompt her on that one. In between there, you could see there were like all these different windows. Those were all different locations that they were going to be jumping to. Now, all three of these girls were in the same VR experience. So their little avatars were standing in the middle and they could see each other, they could see the world around them, and they could even like zoom in and bring people with them. So I found that Wander was an amazing app for me, especially for geology. I mean, not very many eighth graders get excited about some of these places and landforms, but if you can take them there, right, that was the hook for them.
Okay,
Whoops,
so what?
sorry. Um, but I knew that like I needed some more time to find some of these really powerful apps that my students could work within. So I asked our seventh grade gym teacher, Bobby James, I said, I've got 6 VR headsets. Would you like to try them? And he's like, yeah, I'll give them a shot. So we loaded, and these are all apps that I contacted the developer and said, hey, can I have a free code? And they were like, yes, here are a couple. We loaded for Jim the Beat Saber, which is the top left, which is probably one of the apps that you would see on TV where they're slicing through and it's all to music. It really, really gets you moving, gets your heart pumping. It is super, super fun. You don't really realize how much you're moving until you're done and you're like, whoa, that was a lot of work. To the top right hand picture, that is showing an app called 11 Table Tennis. The app developer that created this app actually, you can play it on your own table tennis against a computer. You can play it's ping pong. You can play ping pong against another person. So my students were, and the gym students are playing ping pong against each other. You can play in a tournament. You can play with people outside of your area. I actually ended up playing ping pong with an English language arts teacher in Southern Ohio one day. And I was like, this is so crazy. But again, it's another activity. It gets you moving, it gets you focused, but it's something that fun, fun, fun. Sports Scramble is a goofy, game in which you can use a variety of tools to play different games. For example, you could use a floppy fish to play baseball. You could use a bowling pin to play tennis. Like it's a fun twist on sports. So this was fun to see like the headsets being used and giving me time to think like, okay, what else is out there? And just keep looking around. I also had a really, really cool experience with students using the Anne Frank VR app in English language arts. So I'm going to play this for you. I think it's only like a couple minutes long, but this shows you what students would see within the app. Now, the students use this app in their English language arts class in conjunction with reading uh, several books about the Holocaust. And the language arts teachers, Sherry Rowan and Amy Brown, do a fantastic job giving the students views from all kinds of survivors. And so when they used this VR experience, I was a little bit nervous because I was like, I did not know like what was going to be the reaction. The kids had been playing ping pong and Mission ISS, and this was a very quiet and controlled experience in which the students could walk through or navigate through Anne Frank's house. You could like touch different things in the house. You could touch on things and information would pop up. But you could also hear a lot of like sounds that were just built into the experience going on around you. So the student response, I was so relieved because these are all quotes from them. And you can see the quotes are just perfect. You know, one student said, I was nervous. Yeah, you should be nervous. That experience should have made you feel uncomfortable in some way. Another student, my heart was pounding. I had no idea it would feel that way. The noises were all around me and it made me feel worried. I kept thinking about parts of the book. I think that's a winner, right? That's a VR experience that students left knowing more and feeling more about the content than when they started. For me, while this success was happening in gym and happening in language arts class, I really needed to reset and think, what am I really looking for? What kind of experiences do I want my students to have? And is there a need, or what is a need that can be filled with these tools? So I wanted my students to consume high quality content like the Anne Frank house. I wanted them to create high quality content. Like, let's build things. Let's build stuff using this software and these tools. And I also wanted apps that would just kind of provide incentive for my students, because I don't know if anybody remembers, but last year was hard. It was really hard to get kids engaged, and it was really hard to get them to stay on task and stay focused. And so sometimes my VR headsets were just there to provide incentive. You know, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and built into our stations is the VR headset. One of the incentive apps that I used was that 11 table tennis, because students were researching, or we were learning about forces in motion. And they were looking at different real world examples of how you could see Newton's 3 laws of motion. Ping pong, right? So they actually wanted to use ping pong and use the VR experience and describe when and how they could see Newton's 3 laws of motion. But I kept searching. I kept looking periodically into the Oculus store, which is exactly what a lot of us do when we're looking for apps for our iPads or iPhones. I kept searching and I contacted more app developers. And I was just like, I need to know if this is a good app. Can you give me any details? Could you maybe give me a free code? So these are some more of my success stories. One of the things that I want to point out is that not all of your content has to come from Oculus. There's some amazing YouTube VR videos out there, and I won't show all of this because it's like a 10-minute video. But when we were learning in our genetics unit, just a reminder of some of the cell parts and whatnot. I had a VR station in which students watched this video, and they could move within the video. They could turn around and see different views of themselves inside the cell. So I'll just show a quick part of it.
This is a guided tour of Cellscape, a journey inside of a human cell. For the coolest experience, view this video in a VR headset. If you don't have a headset, you can still explore the environment if you watch this in Google Chrome or on the YouTube app on a smartphone. This project was made possible by the Google Making and Science team. Okay, get ready to shrink down a couple million times and take a trip inside of a person. Here we are. Check out this world. There is so much cool stuff to see. Look to the sides and turn behind you. Tilt your head back and look above.
Now, all of those directions are not going to make sense to us because we're watching it just on our flat screen here. And it's not in a way that we can like turn around and look up and look down. But students using this app were seated in a chair, and I made sure it was a turning chair that they could rotate around in. They were seated and they were completely absorbed in their tour of the cell. When they were done, they were talking to each other about, did you see this? Did you see that? These are 8th graders talking about a video experience, but because it was in a VR headset and because they were like inside of the cell, it was just that much more engaging. So that was one of the wins that I had. And I will say for every one of these wins, there was probably a time that I used the VR headsets that I was like, nope, not going to do that again. So these are just some things that I had positive experiences with.
This is a guided tour.
Oops, sorry. I also wanted the students to do some brainstorming, and there is a phenomenal app called Noda on the Oculus headsets that allows them to create concept maps. They can build if you want to think of like, you know, the web, the concept maps that you would be creating on paper surrounding you with pictures and symbols and text. And you can have more than one person building these concept maps together. Super, super cool. We got okay at this. We didn't get great at creating these, but we got okay with it. We did a couple that were kind of fun. Another experience, a student using the Cubism app. And on the Cubism app, you are basically pulling pieces together and trying to fit it into a puzzle structure. So you can see the student here working with it, and you can see her in the background. What's really cool is you can see on the iPad that I'm holding what she's actually doing. This is called casting. So when a student is working in the VR environment with the headsets, and I don't think I said this before, you can actually jump into the headset to see what they're viewing on your screen. It won't look completely the way it looks to them, but wherever their eyes are focused, that's actually what you will see. So it's good for me because I can A, check on my kids while they're working, and B, I can provide some guidance, or I can provide some questions for them, like, hey, how are you doing, that sort of thing. But you can interact with your students. It's not like they're completely behind that screen and you have no idea what's going on. You can see through the casting in the Oculus app. The other phenomenal, wonderful, wonderful app we use is called Tilt Brush. And it is a drawing app in which my students created diagrams, they created prototypes, drawings. This was one of those apps that like repeatability we kept using over and over and over again. And so you can see the student he's actually painting in his world. You don't see it, but he is adding to his drawing. Now, let's see here. This is the screen view of some of what he was working on. So he was working to show me his Sphero, the prototype he was making for a Sphero design. Basically, the Sphero robot was in the inside, and this was his idea for what was going to sit on top of it that could collect cups and bring them back. He called it the Stinkinator. I think it's because it didn't work very well. But he used arrows to show sliding and fluid friction, and the movement of his design. He also had to show in his painting the calculations for speed to figure out how fast it was going. So in this moment, a student was using Tilt Brush, basically like a lab report. They were sharing their design, sharing their calculations. And actually, you can take these videos that are being created, because all you do is on your device, you just do a screen capture. And a student can go ahead and narrate over top of it and then make it into like an audio and visual lab report. This last one is just a video showing you like what it looks like when you're using the handset in Tilt Brush. So on one of your hands, you are selecting your tools. On the other hand, you're actually like drawing, or in this situation, I was jumping to different parts of the screen. This was actually a timeline that students were going to build with the different time periods, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, all of those Zoic eras, with different organisms that developed during those time periods. So this was me setting it up, and then students were going to be going into these and adding some of the illustrations for it based on what they found. So I started off by having a sea pen drawn in there for the Precambrian time period. Now, I know we are running short on time, so I'm going to jump ahead to some of my aha moments. First of all, I did say those were examples of like when I was like, yes, this is really awesome. I had times where I was like, no, this is not going the direction that I want. And I pulled back on the VR and I waited until it made more sense. But I will say that if you use headsets, or if you even just use apps like Minecraft and Metaverse and Nearpod, make sure that you give some sandbox time. Give them time to play before you expect really good results. So giving them a prompt that is not going to be assessed, followed by a prompt that you may look at a little bit more closer, is definitely always good with technology. And then make sure that you have very clear goals and expectations with each use. I had to repeat myself, like, this is what I expect from you. These are your goals. Let's see how you can meet these goals. Providing a safe environment, I mentioned the cleaning aspect, the space aspect, and the rules of engagement. I mentioned I had to actually, I had to say to some of my colleagues, like, this is something that my students are really working towards being responsible with. Can you support them by, model the behavior you expect? I will also say one of my aha moments was definitely to ease into it. Use the headsets as a station or with a small group to begin with. Practice with one group the day before you plan on using it with the bigger group, and you will feel so much more confident. You will project that confidence. Your students will enjoy the experience that much more as well. Definitely, as you're working, collect and reflect on student data. Just the comments that they make, I jotted those down a lot of times so that I could think about them more later. I collected a lot of work samples where I did screen recordings and thought, how could I have set that student up to create a better drawing in Tilt Brush? How could I have gotten them to go deeper into that experience? Could I have provided better guiding questions? So definitely collect and reflect on your student data as you go. And then the biggest piece of advice, just like anytime you use new technology in the classroom, become a learning partner with your students. If you invite them in to provide feedback, most times they will give honest, helpful feedback. They want it to be as successful as you want it to be, because they want to have their learning environment engaging too, right? And so they're going to give suggestions that make it better for everyone. And so definitely, like, make it a community event, make it something that your students feel like they're partners with you on. Now, this would have been the time where I said, are there any questions? Unfortunately, this is not live, so I cannot take the questions live. But if you are interested in a resource, or if you have a question, or if you're just like want to follow up with, I tried this, or I'm going to, try to get funding this way, my Twitter handle is @LLacrosse. My Gmail account is lealacrosse@gmail.com. And I'd love to talk more about this. VR is, just this last year was new for me as far as using the headsets, but there's so many other VR opportunities. You don't necessarily need Oculus Quest headsets. They just happen to be fun, and they're what we used last year. Make sure that you grab the QR code for your CEU certificate, or you go to the bit.ly link that's shared on the screen, bit.ly/GTech CEU 21. I'm hopeful that this was a good experience for you, that you learned something, and that the rest of the GTech Summit is awesome for you. Have a really, really great experience. I'm super jealous because I am not going to be able to see all of these live as well. So good luck, have fun, and enjoy your school year. It's coming up. Let's look forward to it and let's enjoy it. Have a nice day.